The experts agree. We have just entered the most turbulent decade in US history, and the coming financial volatility that hasn't even hit yet is going to be unlike anything that we've ever seen before. There are severe crises that are brewing on multiple fronts, and they're all converging, and it's likely that this entire economic and financial system is going to have a complete reset soon. You know, the great reset we've been talking about. And it could be the biggest thing, just since the Great Depression of 1929, but it could be the biggest thing since the founding of the USA. So how does international real estate protect your money, your assets, and yourself in an economic collapse? Well, in more ways than you might actually even think. And that's all coming up today on Renegade News. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. Every week on this channel, we discuss the latest news, strategies, and tactics for breaking free from the system, paying less tax, and living anywhere in the world that you want. So let's just jump right on into it. Have you ever thought about getting a second residency somewhere other than in your home country? Because there's probably been no time in history where getting a second residency is more popular or more important than it is right now. I mean, we create this insurance for both our monetary assets, things like putting it into crypto, and we create asset protection trusts for our physical assets, such as stocks, bonds, and land. However, it's through a second residency that we protect ourselves and we provide ourselves with the freedom to use any of those other assets that we've created in our own best interests. Many people want to take the first step into the process of obtaining a second residency through real estate. So what does that mean exactly? And what does it look like? And what are some of your options? We're going to talk about all of that. So when you're looking at buying international real estate, there's a couple of things that you want to consider when you're looking at those properties overseas, especially if you're using them to get a second residency. First of all, if you're buying those properties with an eye towards using it as an investment as well, which you should be, you have to consider whether you want to pay a premium for a property which may have already peaked in price, but is probably pretty secure, like in a stronger foreign economic market, but there may not be that much growth potential. Or you may want to pay less for a property that could provide a lot more velocity in the prices and could turn into some really good rentals in the 5 to 8 to 10 year time frame. You also want to look at tax benefits because in many countries, including the United States, foreign real estate is considered a non-reportable asset. So that means that you don't need to pay any tax on it unless you sell it because of capital gains or if you're getting rental income. And depending on where you are, the rules are going to be different on that. Additionally, by becoming a tax resident of a tax-friendly country, that can help you reduce your tax burden because it allows you to become a non-tax resident of where you are if your primary residence is in any country other than the US. But even as a US citizen, it can help you to qualify for the foreign earned income tax credit exemption. Next, you want to look at the possibility of using that property for residency or for citizenship, because getting a residency permit with cheap real estate can be a really solid strategy for quickly establishing a home base in another country. And it's also one of the easiest ways to get a residency permit in a lot of places. You're not going to need to find a job. You're not going to need to enroll in school. You're not going to have to wait until you retire like you do with many places. And in most cases, you can have that residency within months by simply buying an apartment and filling out a bit of paperwork. It's really that easy. Now, one of the other most important things that you want to think about if you're thinking about this as a second residency is your lifestyle. And if you're looking at for like a vacation lifestyle, you want to consider the kind of things that are important to you. Do you want to be on a beach? Do you want to have, be in the mountains? What kind of quality of life do you want? What kind of amenities do you want? What matters to you? Because all of those can be really important and every country is going to be different from what you're used to. So you really have to list out the importance criteria for any property that you're going to use as a second residency. And the great thing is that most people today don't need to wait for this second residency like they did in the past until they retired, because it's so much easier to work remotely than it ever was. The last few years have proven that even jobs that most of us considered impossible and needed a fixed address, even most of them can be done remotely. So that's opened up the entire world for opportunities to leave now, not waiting until you're 65. But as you're doing this, you'll also have to consider the freedom within the country that you want to move to. Because in many countries, you can really be living in a much freer environment than you're used to now without a lot of oversight and regulations. And that's one of the beauties of moving abroad. It's just possible to get so much more freedom and liberty than you have right now. Now, if you watch the channel at all, you know that we love cryptocurrency. And I didn't feel like any video about buying real estate would be complete without mentioning that you can buy it with Bitcoin. And for a lot of us who are really highly invested in cryptocurrency, sometimes it's good to get diversified into any assets if you have too much of an allocation in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin becomes very useful for real estate transactions. And it's definitely possible to buy real estate in Bitcoin. In Panama, there's actually a huge market for it. There's entire agencies that focus on that. But in the United States, the IRS has now classified Bitcoin as a form of real property. So in a very unique way, real estate Bitcoin transactions are accommodating this whole separate layer of capital investment, and in addition to the real physical properties that are being bought and sold. Now, to use Bitcoin to buy real estate, there has to be an agreement, obviously, between the buyer and seller, and both of those parties should have Bitcoin accounts and wallets, and they should be familiar with how the currency works. It's probably not in your best interest to make your first Bitcoin transaction be something as large as a house or a piece of real estate. And the other thing to be aware of is that because BTC's value in fiat fluctuates so much, that real estate and transactions using BTC usually rely upon a mutual agreement between the buyer and the seller based on the fiat currency sales price, not on the Bitcoin. And so, for example, if you have a price of a property that's 5 million USD that you agree on, then usually the BTC price of that completion is going to be executed at the close of escrow using the value of Bitcoin at the time the escrow closes. Now, I do believe that that's going to change. I think in the future, things will be priced in Bitcoin and this isn't going to be an issue. But for now, that's generally how the process is going to work. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, but don't know where to start or how to get going, then check out the link in the first pinned comment. Anyway, anytime you're looking at real estate, there are some principles that you have to look at and think about, no matter where you're buying, whether it's in your home country, whether it's in some foreign investment. There's certain principles that you have to watch out for, and it becomes even more important to do so when you're buying foreign. And one of the first things is to be sure that what you're buying is actually there and exists. There have been so many off-plan villages and gated communities that have been available across the world, started by different people who were looking for more freedom and are gathering the freedom-seeking community and advertising these communities as being available and advertising this dream lifestyle. Looks absolutely amazing on paper, but you want to make sure that what you buy is actually already there and not only in the blueprint stage. I have known way too many people personally who've been burned by investing in someone else's underfunded pipe dream that just fell apart, and then they couldn't get their money back or had to go through long legal procedures in order to get their money back out of those. So you want to make sure that the community that you're going to invest in actually exists. And you want to make sure that the community is the type of place that you see yourself living in full time and actually looking at that community throughout the year. Some communities can actually become entire ghost towns when it's out of the high season, for example. And for you, that might be fine. Maybe you don't care about neighbors. For most people, moving to a community that completely empties out in the off season might make you feel extremely isolated. So see the community itself, meet the people who are in it, and get a feel for it before you actually make that transaction. You also want to know who the developer is, because if you want to own this piece of property overseas, there's this trust relationship with the developer and the real estate agent that you're working with. And if you can't trust them, then you're not going to feel comfortable with the transaction as it's going through. And even once it's complete, there's going to be problems. And dealing with a foreign real estate market is always going to be different than when you're dealing with at home. And so much comes down to trusting those people who are on the ground and who actually know that market for you. So there are a number of different residency through real estate programs around the world. One of the most popular ones right now that I know a lot of people going for is Portugal, because Portugal and Spain are very similar in that they have this golden visa specifically designed to give permanent residency for themselves and their family members in exchange for an investment in a property of at least 500,000 euros. So obviously this isn't the option for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, but if you have resources, you and any family members under the age of 21 can get an almost instantaneous visa just by buying a property worth 500,000 euros. The investment, residency, and visa, it guarantees the freedom of movement within the EU countries, and The holders can obtain permanent residency after 5 years after purchasing that property or transferring the investment to a Portuguese bank. That program is also characterized by not having any language requirements, which is important because Portuguese can be a difficult language to learn, and you don't even need management or business experiences to get it. Another really popular option right now, which looks excellent, is Albania. And they offer a temporary residence to any real estate investor who purchases a habitable property for their own use. And the great news is there's this huge variety of really cheap condos in Albania, in the central and southern coast areas, and they can start around 20,000 euros. So obviously, if you don't have those big bucks that you require in Portugal and Spain, Albania becomes a very realistic option at the price of really less than the price of a car. With that visa, after obtaining residency, the family members can then join you, and 5 years later, you can actually apply for an Albanian citizenship. Now, I live in Panama, and so clearly I'm a big fan of the Caribbean. I've never really been a fan of living in the EU, although I have friends who love it, and I may try it someday. But the Caribbean has some of the first available and some of the best investment programs for real estate. And there's really 5 main ones, 5 main countries that are offering this citizenship through investment: Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, and St. Lucia. And we're going to talk more about those golden visas in another video. But look, international real estate is just one of the many strategies that you're going to need more and more of to survive over the next few years as the governments step up their levels of draconian control. And quite frankly, they're printing their dollars into oblivion, which is why we believe that there is a crash on the horizon. We don't know when, but it's feeling closer and closer. And you need several strategies to survive that. So that's why every week on Renegade News, we're adding new content to help you get through it all by teaching you how to become as independent as possible from that system and to find as much freedom and liberty as you can in this unfree world. So subscribe right now, the link's down in the description, and don't forget to watch the video that you see on the screen right now for the latest news, information, strategies, and tactics on things like the best places to live and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and second passports and second residencies and so much more. I'm Glenn Kowalski from Renegade News, and I'll see you over there.